Well, I am pumped to be here with Rhanee Tsetsakos. Did I get that right? Did I get your surname right? We just had this conversation and already I'm almost getting it wrong. Rhanee and I have known each other for a few years now, and just pumped to have her share with Encounter about part of National Reconciliation Week and just what it means to be an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person. Tsetsakos, not an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander surname, I'm pretty sure. Where's it from?
It's Greek.
It's Greek. It's Greek. So not Adnyamathanha, exactly. No, it's great. But you're an Adnyamathanha person, a woman. That's your people. You're from Port Augusta originally, is that right? That's.
Born in Adelaide on Kaurna country, grew up in Port Augusta, which is a shared meeting place of Aboriginal people, but it's Bungalow and Cookatha share that space, and Nukunu.
So which is interesting because it's got that huge sign that says Crossroads of Australia. So it's crossroads for Aboriginal peoples as well, right? And
yeah, no, definitely. It's very much known for Aboriginal language groups, and I believe that they still haven't really figured out the native title arrangement for like who has the rightful claim over that. But I don't think that anyone can really. I really do believe that it was more a meeting place for many Aboriginal language groups. Right.
And you yourself, a published author, which is ridiculously impressive. Walking to Corroboree. Why did you write that, by the way? Why did you write a book?
You know what? That's a really good story for this week, because I like to see it as a story about reconciliation.
Okay.
And the way that it actually came about was myself and John was living in Brisbane at the time. And I was approached by one of my mentors through the church, which was Tom Kerr. So
Tommy, love Tom.
Yeah. So I met Tom through the NIAC gatherings of the young adults of the Uniting Church, and he invested. He definitely encouraged me to step into more leadership roles and helped be a mentor to me, and was just that encouraging adult that I needed in my life to affirm me of my gifts and abilities. And so with that relationship and that connection, there grew respect for each other and a wanting to learn more about each other, and just continue that friendship. So when I moved over to Brisbane, we connected a lot still, and he approached me one day because his wife, who is a children's author, so she works in early childhood education and is a director of a kindergarten, but she had previously written 2 children's books, and her publisher had approached her and said, "Oh, we want a story like Walking to Corroboree," because they had been getting a lot of the publisher had been getting a lot of comments about, do you have this type of book? And he's like, "Oh, well, no, we don't, but we can see how we can get this type of book in the process." So he approached her, and she's like, "Oh, I can't write that. I can't tell that story because we say wudnu, which is word for a white person." She's like, "I'm a white woman. I don't feel right telling that story because it's not my story to tell." So she passed this information on to her husband, and Tom was like, "Oh, why don't we have we'll have a conversation with Rhanee and see what she might suggest, or see if she's got any ideas about getting a story like this here out there." So he connected us together, and we had a conversation, and from the first conversation we had, me and her clicked, our creative spirits clicked, and we were like, "Oh, we could do this and we could do this." And then all of a sudden this story and this we're just inspiring each other and encouraging each other, and inspiration grew out of that. And then she would say something, and then that would send me off on this path, "Oh, we could do this and we could do that." So then and so as an early childhood educator, she had sort of the skeleton of the story, and I came along and put the meat on the bone, so to speak. So so when she told me the idea for the story, I was like, "Oh yeah, well, they could do just from me growing up in country and having that connection with my family and with my culture, and hearing the stories of, you know, how our ancestors used to live back in the day, was able to create this story, Walking to Corroboree. And then as we started forming the story, and like I would show she would invite me over to her house. I'd go over for lunch. We'd not only work on the story together, but we'd work on on paintings together. This money Shalaya.
Hi.
That's Mike. Hi, Mike. And then so it was like through this project that we did, like it was a beautiful process of reconciliation too. Like I got to learn more about her and Tom and their family, and we became like really great friends through it. And you know, me and John would often go over, and they would you know, put on dinner for us, and we'd just have conversations about life and about you know, our spirituality and our families, and you know, where we'd come from. So just that genuine connection and friendship grew through our through our passion of writing stories and working with children and working with families. And so I really do see that Walking to Corroboree was like a form of reconciliation at its purest, like, you know, just investing in like working on a project together and forming a relationship out of a shared love and shared passion for storytelling.
Yeah, and that's super interesting, hey, because one of the things that stood out to me as I was like looking on the National Reconciliation Week website with Reconciliation Australia is the first thing they say about it is it's about different people coming together to hear from each other. And I guess as a white minister in the Uniting Church, I think of it and I'm like, oh, this is about me hearing your story. But what I'm hearing from you and what I read on the website is, no, it's kind of about people hearing each other's stories.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and like, because I'm during COVID, like, because I'm an extrovert and I love people and I love being around people. I know, and I'm a vulnerable person. Like, I just can't go and do the things that fill my cup.
Yeah.
So being with people, hearing the stories, living life with people, that's, you know, that's part of my ministry gift, you know, making those connections and keeping those connections.
Yeah.
So it has been difficult for me, but at the same time, like, we're finding more creative ways to keep in touch, you know, with people and to, you know, hear people's stories. But you know, I'm really starting to recognize the importance of the physical, like the physical connections that we have with people. Like, like there's
it's jarring, isn't it?
It helps you go deeper with somebody when you can physically be around somebody and hear their story.
Yeah. Well, speaking of creative expressions, you've just been going berserk creatively with your current project. Can you talk us through that for a minute? What are you doing?
Yep. So like I mentioned before, we're part of the Action Reference Group, and myself and my cousin Jared have been, we was asked to think about some projects that we could do as part of the group. So Jared started collecting some of his bits and pieces from dialysis treatment. So some of the used caps and used plastic bits from the machine, and then I started doing the same. And then he approached me to work on this art project to, I guess, just bring awareness about like who our group is and like who are some of the people that are connected with this group and what some of our stories are. And I guess just so that we could have like a visual, like, you know, Aboriginal people are very visual, like we like to use visuals to tell our story.
Yeah.
And so we thought this would be a good way to tell people our story and, you know, what each of those pieces meant for us, and you know, some of the challenges that we face with being on dialysis, and what it even means to like be on the waiting list for a kidney. And so at the moment we've sorted through all those pieces, and then we're making a design on just like a plywood board, And so we painted it. So we've got some paint, we've got some glue, got some different parts and pieces from our dialysis treatment, and we're putting together a design for an art project. And our hope is to display, so we've got 2 boards, and our hope is to display one of the art pieces at the Royal Adelaide Hospital.
Yeah.
Hopefully in the renal unit or on the renal ward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And or somewhere in the hospital, that's where it's gonna.
But renal makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other piece that we're looking at doing is going to go at Kangawadli. So Kangawadli is an Aboriginal hostel for people coming in from remote and regional places around South Australia if they have to come into the city for treatment, for medical treatment.
Yeah.
And so we just found out late last year, that with the Kangawadli's been approved to get 2 dialysis machines.
Wow.
Put in there, because we've talked about, through our work on the action group, one of the common things that kept coming up is like, we need a sort of like a one-stop kidney shop, so to speak, where we can come to Adelaide, we've got accommodation, we can get in and see our doctors or see the nurses, we can do our dialysis treatment, and everything sort of in a central location where we don't have to go, we don't have to travel here and there all over the city just to attend, numerous appointments. Sort of what like the Cancer Council has got with the Cancer Lodge.
Yes, yeah.
So, we really want to advocate to get like a kidney house or a kidney, kidney space for that. Yeah. Because lots of Aboriginal people are finding themselves on dialysis now. Yeah, right. And, so it's a really big issue within our communities. And we just want to make the transition. We want to make the process a lot easier for people to navigate the health system. When they come into Adelaide, it can be scary for people to, just being told that you got to go on dialysis and that your kidneys are failing is something very overwhelming for anybody to take on. And then coming to the realization that it's a lifelong thing, like you never get rid of it. It's just something that you will live with for the rest of your life. And whether you're doing dialysis treatment or whether you're having a kidney transplant, like it's never a cure. It's just another form of treatment, but you've got to live with it, for the rest of your life. And trying to get the balance right is sometimes very hard. And, moving away from your community and your support networks at home and having to come to Adelaide, sometimes Aboriginal folk who are on dialysis, they don't travel alone by themselves. They'll travel in a big carload or 2 or 3 carloads. So, that impacts like the services that will then be provided for them when they get to Adelaide, because then it's not just themselves that they've got to, worry about and care for. Then they've got like a whole family with them, and they've got to think about accommodation, food, transport.
And that's a super interesting comment to me, because like one of the things I think about as a pastor of a mostly, I'm not sure it's a mostly white church, but certainly a mostly westernized church in thinking, is that I'm always talking about individualism, because the Western mindset is, what about me? What makes me happy? What's going to satisfy me? But in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander context, it's more us, right? It's more like family.
Yeah. And I get conflicted with that all the time too, because, and especially when you are like a vulnerable person with these health issues. Yeah. It's like as much as I need my family for that support as well, like my family has sometimes been part of the overwhelming part about dealing with my own needs, because they've got all their needs, and like being a leader in your community as well, and being Aboriginal leader in your community, there's a lot of expectations and a lot of pressure put on you to show up and to be there for your family. But how do you tell them, but I need to, there's a lot of balancing that goes on with, trying to balance the, your personal, your family, your health, your ministry, your leadership. So, I've always found it quite difficult.
Right now, I feel like the last 12 hours or so, all I've seen on social media is George Floyd. right? Have you come across this story? I mean, the worst. It's an African American guy killed by the cops in the States.
I've seen one thing. Like a picture of a protest.
I was just going to say the worst part is you could just pick any day, any city in the States. It feels like, and anyway, it's horrible. But as I was watching, I couldn't help thinking. I feel like we're getting. I feel like some folk in Australia are getting a bit uptight about this in America, as if to pretend like some of these same injustices aren't happening over here. Now, I think, there's less gun violence, obviously, which changes some dynamics, but I don't know. I think like a reconciliation question for me is just like, Rans, what is it like living as an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person in a predominantly white culture? Like, what don't I get that only you and other folk with your background understand?
I don't know, but just as you're saying that, I'm thinking, okay, one of the experiences that come to mind is like, I have my husband, John, he's from America.
Yeah.
So, and he's had bad experiences with cops. And so he's got this standoffish mentality towards police that, I'm like, oh, babe, they're just doing their job, but, he's come from that culture where it's where people of color get looked down upon and get harassed.
Yes.
And the same happens here. Like when we were living in Port Augusta and we had, we first got our, we'd had the, those little XL cars.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Little Hyundai XLs. Yeah. Or we cruising around town in those. There was one stage in Port Augusta, we were getting picked up every day. In Port Augusta, like every day we'd get picked up by the cops. So, and like we've got this, and then when I moved to Adelaide, like I don't know if you get this or whether it's just, the black fella thing, but I get intense anxiety when I see cops. If they're driving past us.
I do a little bit too, but then I've lost my license, so I deserve to get a bit of anxiety. Like that's different.
Yeah. But but you know what? Since we've gotten the new BMW, never get picked up. I haven't got picked up once.
Look, having said that, I feel like it probably wasn't an XL thing, Ron. It's like, and the thing is, for people that haven't been to Port Augusta, it's not that big. Like, it's not like you.
Yeah, it's not that big.
At some point, that these people have an XL, and you've met them before, and you've played this game before. Mm-hmm. That's. And it just made me think earlier when you were talking about the amount of Aboriginal people with kidney problems. Now, that's not a person-on-person injustice, but it's a percentage thing. It's another thing. I feel like, you kind of have to deal with as an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person, percentage-wise, that Anglos aren't dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, even like we've got our niece staying with us at the moment as well. So, the amount of like there's overcrowding in her house and just that, but there's my responsibility as in Adnyamathanha culture, if all of my sister's children are all my children, so they call me mum as well.
Right.
So my mother and all of her sisters, they're all my mothers.
Yeah.
So like we've got like a group of mothers that we can access, a group of fathers that we can access. So there's that responsibility, like you have that parental responsibility whether you have biological children or not. And so I don't have any biological children, but I've got a responsibility of a parent just through my connection into Adnyamathanha culture and growing up like knowing that as well. So so then the pressure of you to be there for your family's children, like it comes back to that saying, like it takes a village to raise a child.
Just thinking
and that's like like it's so true. Like but then you get like another culture that tells you, oh, but this is the way that you do things. So then like you're sort of conflicted with the law of dominant culture compared to the original law of the land, which is basically the Aboriginal law, which has gone unacknowledged for, since colonization. So yeah, like there's so much that you can, unpack and
I know, that was a big question.
and talk about. But conversations like this here helps to actually open doors into, further learning and further awareness about some of the issues and things that go on in Australia.
Yeah. Well, like on that, I was just going to say, I feel like you're such a universal translator. Like you just stand between worlds so well. I mean, you were talking before about the action group and that, I think that was before we started recording, but you were saying that that's part of what you're doing. You're standing culturally between people who English isn't their first language, and then doctors and nurses. And then to take that idea across the church for a second, Rhanee, I when I read like some of the stuff you post on Facebook, I'm like, I'm really interested by the way you communicate your faith, and I feel like you're bridging those worlds of first people and second people, or maybe it's not even second peoples, but like the world of the Bible and the language used by the original Jews and the Jewish people in Israel and the people of Palestine at that time, with your background and culture, and sort of how do you express that, and how do you wrestle with the tension of going like, I follow Jesus, but also I've got all this cultural heritage around Dreamtime, because that's something I feel like as a white guy I do not get, and I'm always really fascinated when I see you expressing it.
Yeah, I don't know, like I think it's about like paying close attention to your own spirit, and like knowing. I don't know, but it is a really interesting question, because I've tried to create a space where I can explore that more, like explore, Aboriginal spirituality and the spirituality that Jesus talks about, and how do they coexist? How do they complement each other? How are they the same? How are they different? Is there a difference? How can we find the connections?
Yeah.
And I guess like I've been privileged to have opportunities where I can explore, I can be educated about, and especially like the Uniting Church has given me a space to like really explore my faith, but do it in a way of like, do it in a more like a leadership way.
Yeah.
Like, and whether that looks like standing up at the front or being back behind or being in the thick of the middle of it, like I've been able to sort of like focus more on the spirit.
Yeah.
And I think it's the spirit that connects us all.
Yeah.
Because like Aboriginal people have known of the spirit, and I feel like we sort of need to tap into this knowing the spirit of Aboriginal people as well. Like I think there needs to be more space for that, because like I explained it like this here as well. Like when I've grown up in church and I've felt the spirit talking to me, speaking to my heart, and like moving and like being moved by the spirit.
Yeah.
And then I go back to country, and I'm learning my culture, I'm speaking my language, I'm hearing the stories, and I feel the spirit speaking to me.
Yeah.
It's the same spirit. Like I can't distinguish that it's two different spirits. It's just the one spirit that's speaking. So that's how I like to explain it.
Yeah.
Like we've known of the spirit God.
Yeah.
And there's just been different language has been used, different stories have been used to explain like what the spirit is.
Yeah.
And I think the more I learn about both, from a follower of Christ, Christian perspective, and my identity as an Adnyamathanha woman, the more I see the similarities of the speaking of the same spirit. And like, so just my learning of both of them, and then being able to articulate how I see those and how I experience it. Yeah, that sort of helped to reveal, you know, more about my faith, more about my culture, more about spirituality, more about God, who God is,
Yeah,
and you know where God calls me to in life.
totally. And I just think that's awesome. I mean, I've been doing a bit of work with some students lately about the early church and some of Paul's writings, and how Paul, you know, he goes into Greece and he looks around and he goes, oh, how do I share Jesus to people who understand the concept of God and spirituality this way?
He learns their language.
Yeah. And I mean, even the Jewish people really, I mean, obviously it's a little more streamlined, but they're worshiping God. And then Jesus comes along and goes, you get this much, I'm fulfilling the whole thing. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
and you know, you hear stories of people in the Middle East dreaming about Jesus, but they already are exploring the concept of God. It's just Jesus comes along and said, let me show you exactly how it looked. And so this isn't, I think what I'm trying to say here is this isn't like a uniquely Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander thing. And I'm saying that just in case there's Anglos going, oh, you know, dreamtime, it's just being shoehorned in. Like, no, I think this is the people of the world having God revealed to them, and Jesus kind of becomes that final step for everyone. But the way people get is through different understandings of who God is.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I think every story adds to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, you know, each story from each different cultural context too. Well, to God, it's a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
That's right.
But to us, it's like our whole life. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still, and obviously still important to God. And
yeah.
And I think it's super interesting as well when you go a bit further and you read in Acts the stuff that as the gospel gets out into the Gentiles and the Greek world, all the stuff they tell them not to do, it's actually not a huge list. It's a pretty short list of the things they go, okay, these things that you're doing that are not about following Jesus, it's basically 3 things. And that's it. And they say the rest of it it's not our background, it's not our culture, we don't get it, but I don't think it's against God. So go and do it. Go and follow Jesus that way.
Yeah.
I just think that's super interesting. There's not as many restrictions as we think in some of that. The way we understand who God is and how He's revealed.
I was reading
a huge thing, eh?
I don't know if you've seen on Facebook. I think it was Radhika. Is that how you say her name? Radhika. But she put something up on. I've got to find it because someone wrote like a really awesome. Yeah, Radhika Sukava White. So did you meet her through NIAC?
I don't think so.
That time?
No.
Do you know Adrian White?
No.
Adrian White. All right. Well, they attended NIAC, but she said that they ran like an annual baptism confirmation basics of faith class this year, and one of the ladies in her group wrote a poem. Like they invited the participants to as they went through the course to do journal entries or try and come up with their own statement of belief or unbelief.
Yeah.
And so last night, one of the participants shared what she had created, and her name's Gabrielle Love. But I got to read it for you because it's pretty I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Can I share it?
Yeah.
All right. So she says, I believe in a God. I believe in the God. I believe in God. I believe God is the universe. God is unexplainable. God is everywhere in everything and is everyone. I believe I feel the presence of God as the Holy Spirit. I believe the Spirit was here long before me. I believe in following the teachings of Jesus Christ to love God and to love your neighbor. I believe following Jesus is not easy, but it is right. I believe the man Jesus died on the cross. I believe the cross is a symbol of victory over death. I believe I can't earn salvation. It has already happened. I believe that grace overcame the law. I believe the Bible is a witness to help us to reveal what Jesus would do in present times. It is not a rule book. I believe I obey God by resisting the injustices of the world. I believe judgment can come only from heaven, not from people. I believe God's table is for everyone. I believe all people are sacred and holy, unconditionally to come just as they are. It is impossible to be perfect. I have made and will make mistakes. I do not believe Christianity is a destination. To be a Christian is about living and sharing the whole journey of life, the good and the bad, with community and the church. No pretending. I believe Jesus loves me and Jesus knows my story. I believe Jesus does not write people off, so neither will I. I acknowledge the humanity of those who live and think differently than me. They are known and loved too. I believe God is wisdom, and to me, God is hindsight. I believe I am a Christian. I will live with intent, and I find my rest in God. So that was written by Gabriel Love this year. But isn't that?
That's pretty powerful.
It is, right?
There's a lot in that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, one of the things I thought as I was listening to is I'm like, I think I'm on board with most of that and not all of it, but that's okay. I hear that in the poem as well. I don't have to personally be on board with all of that because my understanding and expression of who Jesus is always going to come through my cultural lens, my background, my experience. It's unity and diversity all in that messy combo together.
Yeah, and like just saying too, like, people live and think differently than each other, and that's part, that's part of humanity.
Yeah.
Like, and we need to be willing to listen to others' stories because it's based on their experience of life and and their interpretation of life and how they see it, like you're saying, see it through their lens.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of bring this to a close, Rhanee, because you've been super generous with your time, and that's who you are. I just find you one of the most gracious and generous people I know. Like, you're just very kind. You're very patient, I think. And maybe I should ask John. I don't know, but that's been my experience. I just like, what's your prayer for the? I could ask you about Australia, but what I want to ask about the church in Australia. What's your prayer about reconciliation in the church in Australia? What are a couple of things you'd love to see happen that you're praying for?
I would, I think, a more willingness and openness to hold Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, in I guess a more acknowledged space within our society and within sort of all aspects of Australian life. Like, I feel like we're still, I feel like we say the right things and we know how to talk the talk. Yeah. But walking the walk looks differently. Yeah. So, I would really like to see, like, I think about my time spent working in the Synod office and being the only Aboriginal person working in that space. Yes. And thinking about, the covenant relationship that the Uniting Church says they have with Uniting Aboriginal Islander Christian Congress. Yeah. Like, how are we truly living out and expressing that covenant? Like, we've got a covenant statement, which is just words on a paper. Yeah. We've got people that say we say we're in this covenant relationship, but what does it really look like? Like, what is it? And not just for like, if I asked members of the Uniting Church in Australia, like, how do you live out the covenant relationship? It's about being in a relationship with Aboriginal people. And if you can only name one Aboriginal person, then that's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's a start, but it's not like, it's not about the individual, it's about the community. Yeah. It's about the people. Yeah. So, I guess my prayer is to strengthen the relationships and connections. Yeah. So that we're actually really living life together, because I feel like we're still living life quite separately. Yeah. Parallel. Yeah. there's not like we're this, but we're not quite this.
Yeah.
And so my hope is, and what I will mention here in this space is that I am actually co-chair on the covenanting committee now with Lynn.
Congratulations.
So you know, that's something for people in the church to know, that I'm like really committed to the covenanting relationship. Like, I think that that's the way forward, both for Uniting Church and both for Congress, to get to a space where where all of our lives are enriched by our relationship together, and where Aboriginal people can stop saying, "Can you help us with this?" and non-Indigenous people saying, "How can we help?" Like, to just be, you know what I mean? Like, where we stop saying those statements, and where it's just like, that's what we do. We're living that connected with each other, that I don't even say I need help with this. You're living and walking life with me. You can see what my needs are. I can see what your needs are, and we can help each other. You know, without even saying that we need that help. Like, it just becomes what we do for people that become our family and people that we care for.
That's it. I think someone said it was called loving your neighbour once.
But we only know that if we are hearing each other's stories and living each other's stories with each other.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Rhanee. I really appreciate your time, and I think this is going to be really, really important to a lot of our people, and really helpful. And thanks for being so gracious, and for being a reconciling person. You're always standing in the gap, and like I said, kind of translating culturally for people, and just out of kindness and grace. So thanks so much for your time.
No worries. Thank you for the invite, and thank you for our friendship.
Oh, thank you for our friendship. Love it. Talk soon.
No worries, bro. Take it easy.
You too.